We all make small and big mistakes, like forgetting an important meeting or hitting the wrong button. However, small mistakes can cause huge consequences, like uploading the wrong video instead of the facts videos. However, it's not a big issue, like switching a small button plunged an entire city into chaos or dropping a cigarette and causing $450 million worth of damage. Be ready to know now which small mistake has caused huge consequences. Clear the legs. Legs are an excellent source for which we should be thankful. They help us walk, run, and deliver roundhouse kicks to punks dissing your girl. But you know what legs aren't good for? Buildings. Buildings don't need to walk around or deliver roundhouse kicks. Well, in 1977, Citicorp unveiled its fancy new building, known at the time as the Citigroup Center. It boasted a sleek, modern design with an angled roof and a series of long, slender legs. This fancy new look made the building the toast of New York upon construction. That fabulous design gave the building a glaring weakness: the wind. It gets windy 918 feet up because there's nothing to impose any air resistance, like trees or other buildings. Architecture student Diane Hartley realized that the unique shape of the building made it particularly susceptible to harsh winds, which could wreck its structural integrity. Diane contacted the building's designer, William Lemessurier, with her discovery. William realized his mistake. While he had accounted for strong winds on the building's faces, he hadn't thought about the effects on its corners. Doing frantic research, William realized that a storm strong enough to topple the building occurred roughly once every 55 years. Worse still, its legs meant if it did fall, it wouldn't simply collapse inwards but topple into other buildings, causing even more destruction. Sounds bad, right? It worsens because Diane and William discovered this fact right before Hurricane Ella hit New York. William sprang into action. He created an evacuation plan with the NYPD and ensured 2,500 Red Cross members were on standby. He and a team of engineers worked around the clock for 3 months straight to devise a solution. Working covertly to avoid creating hysteria, engineers welded 2-inch thick steel plates over the building's bolts, increasing its resilience. They worked so secretly that residents of the building didn't even notice them. Small switch chaos. Everybody hates sudden blackouts. No lights, no TV, or no internet for several hours. They are inconvenient, right? But there is nothing to compare to the most legendary blackout in history. On July 13, 1977, 3 lightning bolts struck New York's Con Edison facility. Suddenly, New York City and Westchester County were plunged into darkness. The operator had 15 minutes to restore power and get the facility back up and running. A decent time frame, right? To do that, the operator has to find the right switch between the series of switches. Unfortunately, the unnamed operator messed up, and as a result, the city became completely dark and powerless for 25 hours. Can you hold out for 25 hours in the dark and powerless city? I don't think so. You're probably thinking about what happened in New York City. Unfortunately, the city became a mess, and people immediately descended into the largest riot the city had ever seen. Stores were looted, public infrastructure was vandalized, cars were burned, and the city was consumed by chaos. It resulted in 1,000 fires, 1,600 looting, and 3,700 arrests. Just one missed switch cost the city nearly $300 million in damages. However, another unexpected consequence of the blackout was the birth of mainstream hip-hop music. Professional mixing and music gear were expensive, and they were incredibly upmarket products at the time. After the blackout, the equipment was stolen. The looters sell the equipment quickly at huge discounts. Most of those buyers were poorer inner-city New Yorkers, who would otherwise have to struggle to afford it, and the new generations of musicians had access to the equipment they needed. Hip-hop went from a niche genre to a nationwide phenomenon in years. Maybe the switch flip was worth it to run the DMC eventually. Small nap, huge mistake. Who loves spies in the movies? They are suave, deadly, and have the coolest gadgets. But sometimes, they are not perfect. Here's your imperfect spy. Heinrich Albert, in World War I, was the paymaster for German spies operating in the United States. He ensured the spies were paid on time and had the right supplies for missions and whatever documents they needed, so he was an important guy. In 1915, America wasn't officially in the war, but they provided European allies with ammunition and supplies. Germany thought this was nicked gut, so they set up an enormous spy network sabotaging America's production line, bribing officials, and causing all sorts of trouble. One day, Albert stepped onto a train in Harlem, New York. He sat down and, after a while, fell asleep. Yeah, when you get to a certain age, you get sleepy. However, falling asleep with the briefcase, which contains the names, locations, and missions of every spy in the country, is less understandable, right? When Albert woke up and got off the train, he realized that he had forgotten his briefcase, which had been unfortunately swiped by American Secret Service agents who were on his tail. Albert then put an ad out in the Evening Telegraph, offering $20 for the return of the briefcase, but the US government wasn't that strapped for cash. The US now had all the evidence proving Germany's sabotage, which they used to send all German ambassadors and diplomats back to Germany. The White House then leaked this news to the press, humiliating Germany and making them look weak on the world stage. The US eventually entered the war in 1917, and while this was not entirely Albert's fault, it was a scandal that shocked many Americans out of their formerly passive stance on the war. Yeah, the mistakes never tipped the scales of a world war. Titanic blunder. We all know about Titanic, the supposedly unsinkable cruise ship that sailed into the Atlantic, hit an iceberg, and sank in the icy waters, costing some 1,500 people their lives. What happened and what caused this mistake? The cause has been picked apart, especially by James Cameron. The finger of blame often points toward one man, Fred Fleet. He was the lookout on board the Titanic. It was his job to spot obstacles. Okay, what happened was, before the Titanic departed, the higher-up cruise executive decided they wanted esteemed seaman Henry Wilde on the crew. When he was listed on the crew list, other crew members were moved down in rank to make way for him. Now, here comes the twist. When Henry Wilde was listed so David Blair's presence wasn't requested, the move down in rank was insulting to him, so he was removed from the voyage. This is where a minor but incredibly tragic accident happened. When Blair left, he forgot to hand over the key, which was most important for our lookout guy. This key was for a vital locker that contained binoculars, but the fleet couldn't access his binoculars on the night of the incident. This meant he was unable to see much of the ship's surroundings and couldn't spot the iceberg until it was too late. Fleet could have survived the incident if he had gotten the binoculars, right? Okay, another twist. The key was later found and sold to an auction in 2007 for £90,000, some $200,000 today. Otherwise, it would be priceless. The SIG Big Bang. Okay, viewers, this is very important because this deals with the dangers of smoking. Nah, not about the smoking killing concept. I mean a huge explosion. Let's go to Ukraine, the easy-to-pronounce village of Novobodanivka. I think it's easy to pronounce or not. Well, this town is a rather small and humble place, but there is a small secret hiding. Nestled in the scenic hills of Novobodanivka was an ammunition warehouse that stored 92,000 tons of explosive material. These include weapons, munitions, and explosives the country had little use for. They had simply been stockpiling it after the fall of the Soviet Union in the 90s. The guards were installed to watch the depot. Watching over valuables for hours and hours was boring, so the guards killed time by smoking. The guards were smoking, but the trash can was filled, so the guards moved out of the designated smoking area and closer to the weapons depot. For whatever reason they were there, one guard dropped or flicked an errant cigarette and caused catastrophe. This explosion lasted 8 days and affected an area of around 150 square miles. Many lost their lives, many were injured, and 35,000 had to be evacuated. The incident caused around $450 million worth of damage. Fans' impact. Everybody likes football, and we keep cheering our players, but sometimes cheering and jumping could do this. It was never expected, right? But this is just small, and fans laughed it off. Okay, now what about this? This is disastrous, right? This happened in 2010, with heavy snow coming through that roof. This Minnesota stadium's roof featured an exterior layer of Teflon-coated fiberglass, with an inner layer of fabric acting as the structure's ceiling. The roof itself was sturdy, weighing in at a hefty 580,000 pounds. The problem was an oversight in the material. Even a small hole in a weak fabric can become a big deal if enough pressure is applied, and all that snow applied a lot of pressure. Like a torn bedsheet, the tiny holes in the fabric grew and grew under the weight of the snow before the whole thing collapsed. Imagine if the team had been practicing, they'd have to become skiers. Well, everybody makes mistakes, like using the bathroom in a weird way. Check out this video to learn more about the weirdest bathrooms, or you can check out other videos too.